Okay, everybody, so this is my spoiler review of the first 3 episodes of 9 Perfect Strangers. Make sure you watch all 3 episodes before you watch this review and then come back. We're talking spoilers. Also, just please, no book spoilers in the comments. I'm not going to be talking about the book at all that this is based on, so please leave that for elsewhere so we can all enjoy this as a new experience. So, this show is directed every single episode by Jonathan Levine, who directed movies like 50-50 and The Night Before, Long Shot. The writing duties are split up a bit, which is a little disappointing because I kind of wanted to see the showrunner here, David E. Kelley, who's brought us Big Little Lies, The Undoing, to kind of take helm on writing here. He only does, I think, an episode or 2. But again, like that Big Little Lies connection with Nicole Kidman, with him being the showrunner again, but also that also being based off a book by the same author of Leanne Moriarty, who wrote the book this is based off 9 Perfect Strangers. So I do like that the show opens up with this shot of a blender, and you're seeing these smoothies being made, or cocktails, whatever you want to call it. It's nicely called back later in the first episode to how she's picking these people, Masha, and how she has to kind of find and curate what she wants. We don't know what the cocktail at the end of the day is going to be at the end of the show. We'll probably find out by the end, but I thought that worked well. I think Masha had a great intro as a character in meeting Frances, who I would argue is the story's point of view we get the most from our main characters, and we see her at her weakest moment. This was a good scene by Melissa McCarthy, and it makes sense because it's leading into what we're going to see with Masha. She's this Jesus figure. She's this healer for all these broken people. What I liked about the first episode was it wasn't shying away from letting you know that something is off right away, that we knew this from seeing the trailer. We know what we're signing up for, and they don't make it like, oh, we're going to wait a couple episodes to reveal that something's off with this place. They make it known and kind of get through that point fast, which I appreciate. They're playing a little smart for their audience here, which is good. I'm also very excited to see Nicole Kidman in this role of Masha, because it's a different role for her than recently, where she's, you know, the complaints kind of been she's been playing similar characters, like in The Undoing and Big Little Lies, that it's nice to see her kind of play this antagonist, mysterious character. Now, right off the bat, you're seeing just an amazing performance from Michael Shannon. He always delivers, but even in this first episode, standout scene with another great actress in Samara Weaving and her husband Ben here, and they're in this hot tub scene, and all of a sudden you're seeing how well Michael Shannon's bringing this character to the screen, how complicated his character is, and how likable his character is of Napoleon. So we get little information about Masha's backstory here, that she was someone who overworked, she wasn't the friendliest person in her past life, but she was shot, came back to life, and it's like she changed her life almost dying. And it reminds me a little bit of the Jigsaw Killer from Saw, that it's this character that learned something through near death and is trying to change people from what they learned and show them what they kind of went through and have an awakening themselves that they're sharing. And it's like with lines where she's like, you will all have come to die, I will bring you back, there can be birth in death, tragedy can be a blessing. So that's where that connection comes from, of like kind of like the Jigsaw Killer, as a pop falls behind my head. Where there's a really good hook in this episode is when someone says to Masha, do you mean to fuck with us like this? And she says, this is Tranquillium, I mean to fuck with all of you. So it's a nice hook. It brings the intrigue to the show, what's going to make this different. What's tricky about a show like this, though, is introducing this many characters, especially in a limited series, so we're going to have limited time with them. It's like an Avengers amount of characters. We're kind of trying to slowly learn about all their information, and it is always a challenge with all these different point of views, but I think they do a good job in the first episode of kind of laying a lot of the groundwork and getting what we need to know to advance the story. So I'm going to give the premiere an 8.9. I think it's enough of a hook, and it gets you excited for what's to come. So with the second episode, things started to take a dip down for me here in quality. I think this is where pacing started to feel really off, and that continues to episode 3, that it's bizarre how there is no flow to this show. There's not like a natural rhythm, and it feels like scenes are kind of patched together. And there was a surprising poorly acted scene for me by Melissa McCarthy when we're seeing a little bit of flashback of her when she's finding out about this boy in her life dying in an accident, and something just seemed like it was mailing in from her, which is unusual for her. And some of the flashback effects they do here, like the blurry effect, felt like a Hallmark movie effect, so there is some weird tonal issues, and I think that comes to Jonathan Levine being the director of each episode, because he does stuff that's more sappy. You know, he does these romantic comedies, and he's not really laying into the thriller drama part. We were kind of sold on this. I think there should be more of that, and he's going a little more towards the This Is Us territory, which is frustrating, but we get more into that. But there's an important line by Frances with McCarthy's character at their breakfast scene where she's like, identifying your hump and hurling yourself over it is the essence of life. So that's one of the messages this show is kind of starting to get at, and we're seeing these broken people trying to do that here together. We also see that this character of Yao is in this kind of relationship with Masha, and he he's the one who saved her life. But there's like a jealousy, they say, with Delilah there in that relationship. So they kind of set that Patrick up about the three workers really have going on. And you clearly see in these first 3 episodes that Delilah, who's played by this great up-and-coming actress, Tiffany Boone, that she's the one who's the voice of reason. When Masha is kind of clearly on for her own gains and her own intentions we don't know all about, Delilah kind of brings her a little bit back to earth and is kind of just saying what the audience is feeling, and most realistic character in this show. I did like this scene when they had the exercise of burying yourself in a ditch. I thought it was really good writing, especially when Francis was talking about no one's going to care when I die, facing death and that practice of rebirth here when they come up from the ground. And you could see even the toughest people like Tony here, who's hard to break, he even goes back and practices himself, so it's kind of working on him. Now, where the show I think has been the best so far is the one-on-one scenes with Masha and someone at the resort. So you see that here with her and Jessica, played by Samara Weaving, who's excellent. And, you know, they're talking about her not being seen, that she thinks about Instagram likes all the time and not really what would happen with her family if she died, but about how people would talk about her when she died. But Masha sees right through this and says the real reason she's here, though, is because, you know, her husband doesn't love her. But they throw in little dialogue here to learn more about all our characters, and you see with Regina Hall's character of Carmel, she did makeup in the past on Broadway, but gave it up for her kids. So they give you little things, but you want a little more. But again, this is the challenge of having so many characters. And where I got annoyed about this episode is this is where we hit like a wall. And that happens, we got to meet too much comic relief here with Francis and Tony in these 2 scenes in the pool. I think we only needed 1 comic relief scene, but they should have left the scene with Tony yelling at her and then jumping in the pool and they had a little fight. But then they do another scene with the whole grape joke and him trying to throw a grape at her that almost kills her. But this at that point felt like it was really killing the momentum of the episode and what we had built from the first episode, and it felt like a deleted scene watching this. So I wish they would just trim the fat a little more here. You could have literally cut right to the Paul scene with Francis and Tony after the first comic relief moment with them in the pool, not back-to-back comic scenes. That was just too much. And when I'm talking about that Paul scene, that's where the important is, where Francis is telling him he fell in love with this man Paul Line, who had a fake child, fake illness, and she kind of, even as upset she was, she liked that time of thinking she was seriously loved. Now, where I think this story in these first 2 episodes is working the best is with this family here, with Michael Shannon's family, and especially his wife Heather, who she's thinking about jumping on this cliff. She's at a breaking point. This is terrifying, especially because it's in front of her family, and, you know, you'll see Delilah's really the one who saves her here, and Heather, this is her rock bottom, but she's the one we're really going to see an awakening start first the next episode. So I think they did really well, even with Heather and Michael Shannon's character of Napoleon, their stories in particular in these first 3 episodes. What I did think was odd was at the end of this episode, they set up that Francis had her one-on-one with Masha, but Francis wants to leave and Masha's begging one more day. They kind of left that as the hook, that Masha was going to take this next step to keep someone like Francis. They couldn't lose any of these guests, that they were important. But they never really touched base in episode 3 about Masha's state of mind and that urgency to leave and why she's officially staying. That I thought was a missed jump, and they kind of skipped it in episode 3, which we'll get to. I do want to say something I found silly though in the first episodes, and that's with the character of Zoe, played by Grace Van Patten, who I've interviewed in the past. Check that interview out on my channel. She's awesome, great actress. I'm happy she's getting bigger roles now, but I thought with her character the first 2 episodes, every scene ended with her kind of going in a tantrum, but that wasn't the funny part. The funny part was that it always ended with her just running off screen somewhere, like every single time that it got silly. It's like, okay, there she goes again, running away, upset. So that got repetitive. They could have kind of changed how they presented that, and that to me is part of the directing issues I have with this show, and I want to get into that because then I noticed a lot of directing and cinematography I did not like in episode 3, but we'll hold on that for a second. But what was good about episode 2, it had another good cliffhanger because Masha's taking that initiative, like, we need to step up to the next protocol early because we don't want to lose these people, and you see even Yao and Delilah are hesitant to this, so it leaves you, you know, excited for what's to come. What is Masha's plan here? But again, this episode is where I started seeing that the pace was really slowing down. There's a lot of reflecting, talking, almost too much that you can kind of get bored watching it. And again, it's starting to feel that weight of so many characters, and it doesn't handle as well as I thought episode 1 did. So I'm giving this one a 7.4, but I'm still intrigued at this point. So knowing they released the first 3 episodes, I'm like, okay, maybe episode 3 is going to be like the banger that we kind of need at this point, especially in a limited series to keep people into it. But I don't feel like we really got that. So right off the bat with episode 3, there's some weird choices of character here that I didn't really buy. The first one being that this character played by Luke Evans of Lars, who's definitely the most underwritten so far, but that's probably to, again, give his character more mystery. He's just calling randomly out Ben and Jessica for tension that they're having. For some reason, he brings this up. And it's not clear why he just does that out of the blue. So that felt like it was just random to get the scene going. And then even Carmel lunging for Lars after he says she terrifies him. There's a lot of forced fighting, I feel like. And they're trying to make it funny that way, too. And it does have funny moments. In particular, Michael Shannon, again, because he's just crushing it comically and dramatically. He's, versatile in that way. But again, a lot of it feels kind of forced in, and to get those moments like, okay, we just need to get this scene to get to Carmel launching at Lars. But we don't even really get that much payoff for that later on in the episode anyway. What also felt silly, right, is that this character Tony was getting a lot of screen time, maybe a little too much with the cast that's around him. It's no offense to the actor, he's great, but I feel like he's getting the most screen time right now, and I'd like to see more of some of these other stars we got here that we're all kind of signing up to watch. But it felt a little silly here when we get his flashbacks of his football days, because we'll find out he used to be a tight end for the 49ers, but in these flashback shots, I know it's hard with budget and COVID, but it looks like he's playing on a high school football field. This looks like Friday Night Lights here, and he's supposed to be a professional NFL player. But the point of it is we're learning that he had this basically career-ending injury, and he's hooked to painkillers, so he's withdrawing through this episode as it seems like they're bringing down his dosage. What I did like, though, about this episode was that we had an actually really effective comic relief scene to me was with the potato sack race, and it's because of Regina Hall here and Samara Weaving's characters butting heads throughout the episode, but when they were racing, I love when Samara Weaving just starts doing a cartwheel. I thought that was great. So, like I'm talking about, the best parts of the show are the one-on-ones. The best one-on-one yet, and probably the best scene of this show yet, is any of the moments with Michael Shannon and Nicole Kidman together, and he's talking about his son Zach. We learn more about Zach through him and his one-on-one, that he committed suicide, so it's a very darker turn here, and he's looking at like, we're the masters of our own fate, and Zach chose his own fate. So he does say a lot of things that it seems like him and Masha are eye to eye on, just beliefs and kind of looking inward and taking control of what you can. But when she tries to go the next step with him about his son, he resists, and we get this interesting moment where when he meditates, he envisions, it seems like maybe a child version of himself, and then another child appears with long hair, and it looks like he's like hammering a fish or something with a log. So I don't know what that's all about, but it's something. Maybe if you leave down your theories on that. Again, no book spoilers, no cheating. But where I said this is like the most disappointing thing about this show is there is just no flow to this show. It's all over the place pacing wise. That you really feel here in the skinny dipping scene, cut between the other guy group on their hike, and they're looking for food, but, there's some weird camera choices. That's when Ben's opening up about the lotto that he won, and it's like this intense, out of focus shot behind him. I don't understand the logic behind that, because then it cuts to when the girls are in the hot tub, and Samara Weaving's character, Jessica, when she's telling about her self-esteem issues, they just decide to do this really shaky cam where half her head's cut off, and it just doesn't feel like it's serving the purpose of getting us into the mindset of the character correctly. It just feels odd. Like, this doesn't match what it's supposed to be conveying. So that is really strange to me. And that's the tough thing about the show, because you have so many characters, but you just see little dialogue of people butting heads all the time. That's where it's coming like Big Little Lies, but Big Little Lies I think just does it better because everything's serving a little more of a purpose, doesn't feel as forced in. But right now, because we're in the same location and all these characters, it feels more forced in, which I think can be frustrating to watch. So where this ties around is when all these guys are hungry, they see the billy goat that we've been set up that Masha loves, right? What annoyed the hell out of me was the character of Yao here, who we know really likes Masha. He knows that billy goat's important to her. He has zero resistance to Tony running after and killing this thing. And if you want to argue, okay, he hesitated, he couldn't run after Tony, he wasn't going to catch him, whatever, but even when they're coming back and he's carrying it, it's no point does he say, hey, maybe you shouldn't show Masha that, or maybe we shouldn't bring this here. It just made no sense for Yao's character, especially because then you're going to show Yao saying he's sorry that he didn't do anything to her, like admitting it, but it still doesn't make sense, bizarre, especially if he's apologizing at that. Okay, so why did you do it in the first place? Like, no reaction at all. So weird. I just didn't buy it. But there's a lot of reflective talking here that's not the greatest writing. It's just saying stuff we know, like when Lars says to Lyle, everybody seems a bit different today, and then even Masha says, many truths today revealed. It's like, yes, we've seen this. It's a lot of just telling us what we've seen already, which again slows paces up. Arguably the best moment of the show so far is when Michael Shannon has his monologue about actually the reveal that he killed the billy goat. He quotes a Bible verse, which again I'm starting to say is cliche. Like, every every show's doing the Bible verse thing in movies forever. I'm getting really sick of it. It's always some random verse that fits the theme, like he sang with Leviticus, but it still works. That's just my personal preference. But he's talking about suicide of his son and that unintentional sin, which is referenced in the Bible, and why you sacrifice a goat when you realize this, and that's what he's feeling, and it's coming out now about why he slept in through that alarm that day. His son killed himself, and he thinks if he had gotten up like he usually does to wake him up, it wouldn't have happened, because he believes his son was impulsive, and that mostly suicides are impulsive. And he's bringing up stats how people, the moment before they die, you know, a lot of them are like, why am I doing this? So he really feels that guilt, and it's coming out, and he's talking about it, and that feeling of unintentional sin that he should have gotten up, you know. But you see Heather likes to see this. This is growth by her husband, growth for the character. That's what I'm saying. Their story's kind of working the best at this point, and it's just great acting by Michael Shannon here, like unbelievable. But man, that writing with Heather just out of nowhere. Have you been medicating us? Like, just, I don't think there was even enough for her to say that yet. Like, sure, you know, she sees, you know, her husband's acting differently. People have talked about everyone's acting weird, but I don't know. It's just such a basic thing to say, and it's not a great twist to make the hook for the first 3 episodes out. Like, wow, what a shocker. You know, we've seen this a billion times. So that was frustrating too. A little bit of a letdown. That wasn't a great hook to me. It's like, okay, it's the most predictable reveal you can have. So it's tough, because that episode was my least favorite, even though there was great moments with Michael Shannon in it. The rest to me was just a mess. So I'm going to give this one a 7, but that's bumped up a little bit again by that last monologue. I still have faith in this show. I'm still excited. I'm going to obviously be reviewing every episode, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed by these first 3 episodes. I did like the premiere a lot, but the next 2 really just dropped the ball for me. I just hope it picks up. And again, we can't feel like we're wasting potential with this great cast, this great environment we're in, and it just feels like it's not really well thought out right now and put in a cohesive manner that makes it exciting and interesting, and it needs to lean more into that drama and thriller that we've been sold here. It's kind of annoying. Even like when I'm talking about the This Is Us vibe, that happens even in Michael Shannon's dialogue, where I don't think you need to add that This Is Us music behind him. It's like, oh, it's just like, just leave it out. It doesn't help. So I get frustrated with that, but again, I still think there's a high ceiling here for the show, and it should pick up, hopefully. But it's a limited series, so it's like, come on, let's go. We're already 3 down. Let's get cooking now. Let's give me something I haven't seen before. Use this talent you have here and get us hooked. Okay, that's what we're waiting for. But let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment, try to respond to as many as I can. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of 9 Perfect Strangers. I also do celebrity interviews as well, so you're going to want to check that out. Please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And if you really love what I do here, I'd really appreciate if you sign up to be a member. You can get exclusive live streams that I do that you'll be a part of, and it will help me do this full time one day and live my dream and give you guys more videos. So I really appreciate it. Till next time, have a great day.